Hey, how's it going, everyone? Just want to do a video on flat Earth and Bible prophecy, and just unavoidable links that we have to make. So my channel, pretty much at this point, assumes that we live on a flat, non-rotating surface, and making extrapolations, predictions, through the Bible, and that type of thing. And so, I want to talk about the importance of flat Earth coming out and just how everything about it signals God's existence first and foremost, literal existence, and then the things that He's doing, and what He's capable of doing on Earth if He's able, if He's able to orchestrate a deception like that. So first and foremost, God is behind the deception. That He could perform a deception like that means that He's doing something, very unique and specific in this time period for Him to undo that deception to many of us. And then what does that infer going forward? I think these are very important questions that it's unavoidable. It should be obvious, but I think as people get into it more and more and become certain of it, even in just the very least that we're not spinning, the natural question would be, why is this all happening? And so I'm just watching like all this stuff with the UN and the repo market and all this financial stuff, and like all these countries, now it's like US and Iran. This one title from Fox News, Tulsi Gabbard on calls for impeachment, US-Iran tensions. So we have all this like tension really, and like people hate Trump, even though again, he doesn't control anything meaningful going on in the world. He might be able to like, enact a couple things here and there, and people that lobby, with him close, his family or whatever, might be able to get them some contracts. But for the most part, he doesn't really have much power. It's the central banks and the banks, and a term in finance, it's kind of some irony, is that like they call money liquidity, and in the Bible, it describes God's words as like, water, and streams of water and overflowing and all that. So there's a sort of liquidity in the spirit world in the Bible, biblical sense, and then there's a form of liquidity here, and those two compete every day, really, with all of us throughout human history. And then so that's where the real power is. On the spiritual side, it's through God's word and His quote liquidity, and then here on earth, it's the liquidity through these Federal Reserve notes, which Trump doesn't control. He doesn't. So this whole thing, even without flat Earth coming out, we know that that's just an act. The central banks now, everybody knows, are controlling everything literally every single day and manipulating the markets. So, but now if you're a flat earther, it's huge because you get that one for free, the financial stuff. If they can hide the shape of the earth for us throughout our whole life and generations, they can, manipulate the money supply and all that. And they've been doing that for a while as well. And so that's not hard to believe. And in fact needed to orchestrate a deception like that. They would need to put us all in schools and create a system like this. But then all this like tension, all this beef, between countries and all that, it's just impossible to ignore, this is where, I've unfortunately, but I have to throw a lot of flat earthers under the bus who've been in this for a while and claim to be people who believe that the earth is flat or know that the earth is flat with the observations that they've done themselves. This is unavoidable. It's like writing papers and stuff like that. No one's being fooled by that. Come on, if somebody wrote a paper and in the paper acknowledged that, every nation, every entity at the highest levels and even on low levels are aligned and confederate, against, the true shape of our earth and our reality, that's different, and pointing that out. And that type of thing, somebody who's very vocal about that, because it's obvious, it's the elephant in the room. That's the whole point of this video, is that all the nations, all the leaders, the people in defense and all that, they know what the shape of the earth is. They know if we're spinning or not, through their militaries, and whether the stories are real and who gives them the script to read. They know like people who are the script writers, and then they know who they report to and then who they might report to. There's not that many levels above where there are antichrist satanic entities on earth who are like executing God's narrative, you know, whether it be banking or geopolitical or whatever, you know, just in the news. And so there's obviously people that they're aware of, you know, that are putting lies, you know, out there, or in the very least misinformation, half truths and stuff like that. So that's that should be obvious, you know, to people that you know, that this is a very, very well orchestrated, crafted scheme, and it's worldwide, you know, amongst all the leadership. There's no like one virtuous country out there that are just like Iran. They're the good guys. They care about their people, or India or China or America. There's no like quote good guys at the leadership. Everybody's enslaved. Like everybody is working their ass off, literally, for these debt notes just to barely make ends meet. And that's happening worldwide. Iran's economy is struggling as well. China is now slowing down because we're not buying as much. India has been just in shambles for a long time. And I mean, everywhere, you know, Canada and US are essentially the same. If one goes down, the other. So we're kind of on that downward trend now. And Mexico is just just a haven for criminals, you know. And so the whole world is just completely enslaved. And there's no like one good guy or a couple of good guys out there who are even saying anything, much less have the power to change anything. So let's not be, it's again, this is worrisome that I even have to make a video like this. It should be obvious that this is the next logical thing to analyze. It's like, what's going on in the news? You know, if you're a flat earther and you're even half awake to what's going on in the news, there's all this like beef, you know, people are, and then just the elections are a joke, you know. It's like, so we have to then understand that God is behind that, you know. And it's like, that's where it's people who are resistant to give God credit for the deception of Baal Earth are then, to me, just actors, because they then will not go to the next logical, obvious place mentally of all the goings on of the world have to be orchestrated and staged as well, because none of this beef is real, you know. Like, they're not. What did we do to Iran or anything like that? They didn't do anything to us. So what are all these tensions? You know, like, what is this? What's the point? What's the point of these wars and stuff like that, unless God is behind it? You know, and so that's the obvious place that people have to go. And if it's uncomfortable for people, it's difficult, impossible for me to believe that that's a genuine flat earther, because it's obvious. You know, like it's not a conspiracy that you know, you can pick and choose. You know, it then has an obvious derivative, an effect to lead us to see the world through. You know, we have no choice, if we're a flat earther, to look at the world through the fact that we and everybody on earth has been deceived about our reality, and they're not stopping. You know, they're not just stopping at the shape of the earth. There has to be a divine reason for this, or else none of this makes any sense at all. And so even the financial system, they're essentially just kamikazes. Like, they're just printing money and just kind of printing it until, you know, the music stops, you know. And so the people on the highest level on the left-hand side, these Satanists, they know like God is supposed to return. You know, they're not dumb. Like, God has to give them some insight into like what to do. So everybody obviously knows if you just keep printing money and then just kind of keep feeding people the money, eventually the people, if it's not trickling down, it's going to create instability and cause problems. So they know that the system is unstable. They're saying it in the mainstream news. And so they're just enjoying it, you know, while the music's playing. And so I'm about to do a video even in the book of Daniel where literally music is being played, you know, to up until the last moment, you know, and that type of thing. And so there is some literalness to music actually being used, but more like sort of symbolically, it's like the Federal Reserve and the central banks are just like injecting, quote, liquidity into the markets, and that's the music. You know, the music is just keep keep playing, keep enjoying it, keep doing your thing, and all that. But they know that that's not going to go on forever, and so all these leaders, they all are just actors. That's what we have to. That's what I'm trying to say is, as flat earthers, we have no choice but to believe that, because it's obvious. Just from the way that they're interacting with one another, and they would all have to know that the Earth is flat, and not rotating, and so they're all on the same page, so to speak. And so once we see that, to me, then the next natural thing is figuring out, which God is behind it and why is he doing it. And so to me, that's where a genuine flat earther should be. And it's reaffirming for me personally when flat earthers don't say these things, that there's even more likely that there's a spiritual motive behind it and God is working. Because it's one thing for people who are just actors on the left-hand side doing deception and stuff, just talking in circles and fake beef and all that kind of stuff. But if it's happening on the flat earth side, like if a flat earther is like genuinely like writes a paper to like think that they're going to change something, or thinks that flat earth is going to win, we're going to flat smack the world into flat earth, or just doesn't call out the tremendous amount of evil that would be needed to implement something like this, to me, then we have to be at the end. Because there's no way somebody who could be that, quote, smart to get into flat earth and understand the deception could then be that dumb to not point out the obvious fact that all these nations are aligned. And so then we would wonder, a normal person would be like, why are they fighting then? If they're all in on it, why is there this tension? And why now? Why is it when the economy seems to be slowing down that Iran seems to hate us all of a sudden? And Americans are broke, so now there's all this like tariff wars between China and stuff. It's just all these coincidences. And a flat Earth has now come out, and we know who Mystery Babylon is. And we see gay pride at its absolute pinnacle, worldwide, and at its peak. And so all these things are a confluence of events that, for anybody, in my opinion, who's a genuine flat earther, they have no choice but to face them head on. And then to me, it leads anybody who's at least open to learning to the God of the Bible and that the fact that he's doing something in the near future. Hope everyone's doing well. Bye.